My girlfriend said, "You were just a substitute until my ex-boyfriend came back, so we're over." I left and moved on with my life. Now she's back asking for my help. Before we go on, hit subscribe and drop a comment telling us which city you're tuning in from. I met Denise when I was going through a pretty quiet phase of my life. I wasn't desperate for a partner, nor looking to fill voids. We just clicked, started talking, went out a couple of times, and everything flowed quickly. She was charismatic, confident, very expressive. From the start, she made it clear she was coming from a complicated relationship, a long one with an older man. At that time, I didn't give it much importance. I thought it was in the past. At first, the relationship seemed normal. We had good times, long conversations, simple plans. However, over time, small situations began to appear that I can now see clearly with distance, but which I normalized at the time. Our relationship always had an underlying tension, not constant arguments, but a feeling of being evaluated, as if I had to meet certain standards that were never fully defined. Denise used to compare me with other people. She didn't do it directly or aggressively. It was subtle, gentle enough that I wouldn't react immediately. I remember comments like, "Honey, look at Tina. They bought her the new iPhone. How lucky she is to have a boyfriend like that." She'd say it with a smile, as if she was just making a trivial comment. I'd respond with a neutral comment, not thinking too much about it. On another occasion, she said, "Honey, you know what? I think you should go to the gym a bit like Natalia's boyfriend. He looks very healthy." She never said it as a reproach. She never said, "You don't do enough." She always wrapped it in other people's examples, as if she was just sharing loose thoughts. She also talked a lot about her friends' relationships. "Lai and Julio are going to live together," she told me once. "He pays for everything for her." The truth is, you can tell when a couple like that's going to last forever. How good that such men still exist today. At that moment, I nodded without knowing exactly what to answer. Today, I realized those weren't simple comments. They were constant comparisons, slowly undermining my self-perception within the relationship. But I was in love. And when you're in love, you tend to justify what you don't understand and ignore what makes you uncomfortable. I thought maybe I was overreacting, that everyone compares in some way, that it wasn't personal. I kept telling myself Denise was just expressive. That was her way of talking. The toxicity didn't come all at once. It was progressive. Small comments, long silences when she didn't like something. Cold attitudes that later disappeared without explanation. I learned to walk carefully, to weigh my words, to try to be enough without knowing exactly for what. As the months passed, the comparisons changed focus. They weren't just her friends' boyfriends anymore. She started mentioning her ex. At first, it was sporadic. My ex would have known how to do it better. He understands more about that topic. Other times, my ex, at your age, already owned his own home. That's what unsettled me the most. Denise was 25 years old. Her ex was 35 when they were together. They were completely different life stages, but she still presented him as a valid reference point. Every comment left me with a strange feeling, as if I were competing with someone who wasn't present, but who'd never completely left. I tried to talk about it with her a couple of times. I told her those comments made me uncomfortable, that I felt she was constantly comparing me. She denied it. She said I was overreacting, that I was insecure, that she was just telling the truth, that she didn't have bad intentions. In the end, I'd end up apologizing for misinterpreting her words. That's how it was for months, until one day, everything changed. There was no prior argument, no clear warnings, she just disappeared. One day, she stopped replying to messages. I thought she was busy. An afternoon passed, then a night. I tried to call her, calls weren't going through. The next day, I checked social media and realized I couldn't see anything on her profile. I thought it was an error. I tried from another account. Nothing. She blocked me everywhere. I didn't understand what was happening. We hadn't fought. There were no signs of a breakup. The last message I sent her was something simple, asking how she was. 2 days passed. My anxiety grew. I started wondering if something had happened to her, if she was okay, if some problem had occurred. I decided to go to her place. It wasn't an impulsive decision. I hesitated quite a bit. I knew I might seem desperate, but the uncertainty was worse. I needed an explanation. When I arrived, I knocked on the door. I heard movement inside. I knew someone was there. After a few seconds, the door opened. It was Denise. She didn't seem surprised to see me. She didn't seem uncomfortable. Her expression was neutral, almost distant. I asked her if she was okay, if anything had happened, why she'd blocked me. She looked at me for a few seconds, as if she was tired of a conversation she didn't want to have. Then, she said with a calm that I still find hard to understand, "Well, I'm sorry, but I never loved you." I felt the air leave my body. Before I could react, she continued, "You were just a substitute until my ex-boyfriend came back. So we're over." She didn't raise her voice. There was no anger. There was no drama. She said it like someone clarifying something obvious. I remained silent. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to ask. Everything I'd lived through for a year flashed through my mind in a matter of seconds. Before I could respond, she took a step back and closed the door in my face. After that day, there was no closure, no final conversation, no deeper explanation, just a phrase, a door closing, and silence. The first few days were confusing. I didn't feel immediate sadness, but a strange mix of emptiness and bewilderment. I'd wake up with the feeling that something wasn't right, as if reality still hadn't fully settled. As the weeks passed, I understood something I'd ignored at the time. Denise wasn't just my partner. She was practically my only social life in that city. I'd moved for work a short time before meeting her. I didn't have close friends there. My interactions were limited to the work environment, a place I honestly detested. It was a demanding job with a tense atmosphere, colleagues I didn't connect with, and shifts that left me physically and mentally exhausted. When I left work, she was my escape, my weekends, my conversations, my plans. When she left, everything went silent. For the first time in a long time, I faced real loneliness. Not the romanticized loneliness, but that heavy feeling when you get home and there's no one to tell about your day. There were nights I thought about writing to her even after everything she'd said. Not because I believed she'd come back, but out of habit, out of emotional inertia. I'd stop just before sending any message, remembering her words with an uncomfortable clarity. "You were just a substitute." That phrase became a clear, painful, but necessary boundary. I decided that if I was going to stay in this city, I couldn't keep living that way. I needed something not tied to her or to work. I'd always wanted to learn to play the guitar. It was an idea I'd postponed for years, telling myself I didn't have time, that it was too late to start, that I didn't have talent. That time I didn't look for excuses. I signed up for in-person classes. The first day, I went with low expectations. I didn't expect to meet anyone or make friends. I just wanted to occupy my time and keep my mind busy. That's where I met Lana. She arrived late for class, apologized to the instructor, and sat next to me. We exchanged a simple greeting, nothing more. During class, I noticed we were both equally lost with the basic chords. That broke the ice a bit. As we left, we commented on how difficult it was to coordinate our fingers. It was a brief, casual conversation with no ulterior motives. As the weeks passed, we started talking more. We discovered similar tastes, not just in music, but in movies, books, and ways of seeing life. Lana was calm, observant, and had a very direct way of communicating, no beating around the bush or mixed messages. That gave me confidence, but also made me cautious. I didn't want to repeat the same mistake. For the first time, I took the time to get to know someone without rushing. We went out for coffee, walked around, saw small exhibitions. There were no quick declarations or implicit promises. Everything was slow and clear. There were times when she tried to get closer emotionally, and I set boundaries. I explained to her, without going into details, that I was coming from a complicated relationship and needed to take it slow. Lana understood. She never pressured me, never compared me to anyone, never made me feel like I had to prove anything to be enough. That, without me realizing it, was healing. Months passed like that. The relationship built naturally, almost without me realizing the exact moment it stopped being just a friendship. When we finally became a couple, there's already a solid foundation, trust, communication, and mutual respect, something looking back I'd never had with Denise. By then, almost 8 months had passed since that door closing in my face. 8 months in which I rebuilt routines, strengthened my self-esteem, and stopped wondering what I'd done wrong. I understood that not every failure is shared responsibility and that some people just aren't emotionally available. One night, Lana and I decided to stay in my apartment. We prepared something to eat, chose a movie, and settled on the couch. It was one of those simple moments that don't seem important until you're living them. The movie progressed, we talked between scenes, laughed at unimportant things. I felt at peace. Then someone knocked on the door. We weren't expecting anyone. I thought maybe it was a neighbor or some mistake. I got up from the couch, walked to the door, and looked through the peephole. It was Denise. Denise was the first to speak. "Hi, Caleb. Long time no see." Her voice didn't sound nervous or regretful. It sounded calm, almost casual, as if 8 months hadn't passed since I last saw her, as if she hadn't told me she never loved me before closing a door in my face. I didn't understand what she was doing there. I didn't even try to hide my annoyance. "What are you doing here?" I told her. "Get out." Denise took a deep breath and raised her voice a bit. "I made a mistake." "Okay, I admit it. I'm an idiot. Please, let me talk to you for a bit." At that moment, Lana appeared behind me, still wearing the jacket I'd lent her and the short shorts she was comfortable in at home. She stood watching the scene from the doorframe. "Who's she?" she asked. "She's Denise," I replied. "I don't know what she's doing here." Denise looked over my shoulder and noticed Lana's presence. She raised an eyebrow, silently evaluating her. Lana, without saying anything else, turned around and walked towards the living room, leaving us alone for a few seconds, but not completely missing out on the situation. It was then that Denise spoke again. "You forgot me so quickly," she said, pointing towards the inside of the apartment. "Look at how she's dressed. Does that seem decent to you?" I felt a mix of anger and clarity. That comment was exactly the kind of thing she'd always said, only this time I wasn't willing to tolerate it. I moved to close the door. Denise reacted immediately and put her hand out to stop it. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I didn't mean that. I just want you to help me, please." I looked at her expressionlessly. "Help you with what?" She sighed as if she'd been waiting for that question. "I made a mistake, Caleb. My ex, he's a bad person. I fell into his trap. When I was with you, I was working and had some money. He convinced me to quit my job. He told me I didn't need it, that he'd take care of everything. I thought he was a great man, and I'd be happy." She paused briefly, lowering her gaze. "Then he'd lock me in the house. He wouldn't let me out. He wanted dinner ready when he arrived. If he didn't like it, he'd hit me." She looked up, tears welling up. "Help me, please." I listened in silence. I didn't feel the impulse to hug her or console her, just a cold, firm distance. "Who do you think I am?" I replied. "Jesus Christ, get out of here," and that's that. Problem solved. Denise shook her head. "I can't. I've got no money. Just give me something, please. And if you can, let me live with you. I know you're a good guy. Believe me, everything will be like before. We can be happy." I let out a brief, humorless laugh. "Happy? You constantly compared me. I was never enough for you. That wasn't happiness." "Caleb, please," she insisted. "I'm a helpless woman. Give me at least some money for the good times." At that moment, Lana returned from the living room and stood beside me, not invading the space, but making her presence clear. "All right," she said. "What's going on here?" She looked at Denise calmly from top to bottom. "First of all," she continued, "I'm sorry for not dressing decently, as you say. But I'm at my boyfriend's home, and I like to be comfortable." Then she looked directly at her. "If I understand correctly, you left him, slammed the door in his face for your ex, who ended up being a violent man, and now you expect him to help you. What reality do you live in?" Denise frowned. "Don't interfere," she spat. "You opportunistic bitch. Sure, you saw him sad and heartbroken and took advantage." Lana didn't raise her voice. "Don't project," she replied. "You're the opportunist. It was you. You were waiting for your ex to be available. You thought he'd give you a great life, and he ended up hitting you. Did you really think your actions wouldn't have consequences?" Denise burst into tears. "Help me, please, Caleb." She tried to approach as if she wanted to hug me. I stepped back. Lana stepped forward. "Don't even think about it." Then she looked at me. "But well, Caleb, you decide." I looked at her. and then at Denise. Denise, I said, you made mistakes. Now, take responsibility for them. Good luck and have a good life. Seek help. Go to your mother or to some association. I'm not going to help you. Denise cried louder. Please, I'm not that bad. I only did it for love. I thought it would be good. I looked at her one last time. I don't care anymore. I closed the door in her face. Denise remained on the other side of the door for a few more minutes. I heard her cry, talk between sobs, say things I couldn't quite make out. I didn't open it. I didn't respond. I didn't feel the need to. Lana and I went back to the living room. The movie was still paused, but it didn't matter to resume it anymore. The atmosphere was heavy, not with tension, but with a kind of silent closure. After a moment, Lana was the first to speak. You should have closed the door from the start, she said without reproach, more like an observation. Yeah, I replied. I'm sorry. She nodded slowly. Poor woman, she added. She's just finding out that every action has consequences. She fell silent for a few seconds, as if she was processing what had happened. Then she looked at me and, with a different tone, said, and she came to try and take my man from me. She didn't say it with drama or exaggerated jealousy. She said it with certainty, with confidence. Lana sat playfully on me and continued looking directly into my eyes. You're mine, understand? Mine, only mine. Yes, I replied. Understood. We laughed together. For the first time in a long time, I felt lightness after a difficult situation. We spent that night together. I don't need to go into details. It was a quiet, intimate, normal night, something for a long time I believed I didn't deserve. In the following days, Denise tried to contact me. First from unknown numbers, then from new social media accounts. Long messages, some asking for forgiveness, others justifying themselves, others complaining. I didn't reply to any. I blocked her, not out of resentment, but out of consistency. I understood that helping her didn't mean carrying the consequences of her decisions, nor allowing her to cross boundaries that were so hard for me to learn to set. Over time, I reflected a lot on everything that had happened. During that relationship, I confused love with endurance. I confused understanding with self-abandonment. I allowed comparisons, devaluations, and silences because I believed that's how a relationship was maintained. I learned the hard way that no one deserves to be a substitute in another person's life, that it's not one's responsibility to save someone who didn't want to listen to you when you were there from the beginning. I also understood something important. Other people's pain doesn't erase the harm caused. A victim may have been a perpetrator before, and that doesn't invalidate their suffering, but it also doesn't oblige others to sacrifice themselves for them. Moving on wasn't an act of coldness. It was an act of self-respect. Today I know that closing that door was one of the healthiest decisions I've made, and I don't regret it.